Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has not had the smoothest time in the public eye, at least in my personal opinion. Don't know if you agree with me, but we gotta remember that we got our first look at gameplay back in June of 2022, and then shortly after, the game, which was originally set to release, I believe in October, was delayed until the following year in 2024. Don't hold it against me if I got those dates mixed up. I cannot remember when the state of play exactly was, but I know that we definitely got the game delayed all the way until February 2nd of 2024. And now they've begun a new marketing push where we're going to be getting these developer diaries, these insiders into the development and the journey, story, and gameplay of Suicide Squad. And I just wanted to share with you my biggest issues that I have, at least so far, with watching this first Suicide Squad insider. My worry has always been that the game is going to be a third-person shooter with a DC skin on it, ever since we got our first look at actual gameplay back at that PlayStation State of Play. Obviously, leading up to that, we saw a little bit of look at the menu system, people noticed the battle pass, and worry ensued. Many of us knew, though, that the delay that they told us about wasn't anything long enough to institute some type of complete overhaul of the gameplay mechanics. But don't worry, this video is not going to be me dunking on the title simply because it's a third-person shooter, and that's not what I was expecting. There's a portion that I'll get into on that, but I'm mainly breaking down my thoughts on everything they decided to show us and how they seem to be going about the marketing leading up to the release of the game. First red flag is that in this entry of the developer diary, they showed us the intro of the game, and it felt like they showed us glimpses of the entire intro, like they were giving away a lot of information. I personally felt like it came off as them trying to explain themselves and why the game is the way it is to the public as a response to the previous backlash. And some of the gameplay and how it looks and plays reminds me of the recent Saints Row title, but I'll get to that point a little bit later in the video, among other things, as far as how much they showed us. Red flag number 2, and this one goes into the fact that it's a third-person shooter. I know what I said, but they reiterate the fact to us that this is a continuation off of the Arkham series, that instead of just the perspective of Bruce Wayne, you've got the perspective of multiple characters, and this time it's the villains instead of the heroes like we're normally used to. And my thing is that you have the foundation of the Arkham series. Expanded combat with a new focus on teamwork tactics seems like the route that would have made the most sense. I would have expected short to mid-range combat with Captain Boomerang, mid to long-range combat with Deadshot, since he's the one who typically specializes in different guns, close quarters combat with Harley Quinn, and maybe she would have had some gunplay in there, maybe some type of concussive weapon instead of, something that uses bullets, and full-on AoE control of the environment tanking with King Shark. I would have thought that that would have added a little bit more depth and layering. It would have given us a kind of game similar to Gotham Knights, but it could have been something so much greater since they had the Arkham games to build off of. But instead, it feels like everyone's just going to be handed a gun, and then all of their special abilities only come into play in completely close quarters with the use of their special moves or supers. Now, before we go to number 3, I want to say something that looks good in this game. The verticality in the environment looks great. I love the way the characters are moving around the map, the open world, and Metropolis. Getting to see Metropolis in a AAA title for the first time in I don't know how long is something to commend and something to be excited for. But as we go into traversal, that brings me to red flag number 3. Again, going into them showing and trying to explain to us, because a lot of people were asking questions like, why is Captain Boomerang teleporting around? And they end up telling us that, well, he's got his hands on a Speed Force gauntlet. Well, they go ahead and show us how that ends up happening. Again, basically giving away the intro to the story. They show Task Force X getting into the Hall of Justice, where they get their hands on different gear from the Justice League that you're going to end up using in the open world. And my thing about that is, why would the Justice League have their actual working gear in the Hall of Justice and not replicas? Like, the way Harley Quinn is going to get around is by using Batman's grappling hook and glider. You mean to tell me that Batman left a working model of his grappling hook and glider in the Hall of Justice, never considering that someone could break in and steal them? Batman. We're talking about Batman here. It's a lot of suspending disbelief for this whole thing for me so far as to why this story aspect makes sense. But what you best believe is that if you're feeling that I got some valid points, be sure to hit the like button and let me know that you're rocking with my thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more breakdowns like this. Moving on to number 4, I felt like they're giving away so many characters and so many reveals. They ended up showing us Green Lantern, who is more than likely the first boss fight, at least if I interpret it correctly. He runs into them shortly after they drop into the open world for the first time. They explain that Penguin is an arms dealer and that's where guns come into play. Going back to what I said earlier, where it felt like they're showing us, hey guys, here's the explanation for the third-person shooter part. Here it is. This is why that's in there. And we even got a quick glimpse of Lex Luthor. So I can assume that we're going to be facing him at some point. I'm shocked that they didn't save something like that for us to find out later while playing the game. I bring this up because they end up saying in The Insider that this game is going to be very story-driven. So my hope is that there'll be twists and turns in the story that are gonna really captivate us. And with them showing us so much in just the first Insider video, felt a little off to me. I know that it was story and gameplay focused, but it still felt like they showed us a lot. My hope is that they're still leaving something back for us to be surprised about. And red flag number 5, the enemies, at least for right now, seem very bullet sponge style. It looks like you deal with numerous amounts of enemies, but unless you're on a harder difficulty, the AI don't seem that challenging. If you look right here where King Shark is wide open in the air with all of these enemies firing at him, but nothing is hitting him. This is what I meant earlier when I said it kind of reminded me of Saints Row. It just feels like the AI, at least from what I watched, is just going to be shooting aimlessly. And maybe if you're not paying attention, they're going to be giving you a hard time. But other than that, this doesn't seem very overwhelming at all to the player. Again, I could be wrong. In the final build, things could be different. I'm just giving you my observations on what I've seen right now. And I am sorry if I sound like I'm mad nitpicking. We've still got some time before the game drops. But right now, there's a couple of red flags like this with the AI that I'm noticing that I don't know if anyone is really talking about. This one isn't really a gripe, it's just funny to me. I know that we all know that despite the title of the game, you're probably not gonna have to kill the Justice League. That's the mission, and I would assume there's a twist that you work with Wonder Woman or someone else to find a way to save them. It's just funny to me how throughout this Insider, they were really emphasizing, hey, you know, this is the biggest challenge that they'll have ever faced. They've got to kill the Justice League, and there's no other way to deal with this. But despite all these red flags I pointed out, there's some aspects of this game that I do believe could be great. Co-op gameplay can make this incredibly enjoyable with friends. The traversal looks like a lot of fun. And as long as the open world is not empty or full of overly repetitive side missions, the Suicide Squad game could be a great title for its target audience. Me personally, I'm still sleeping with one eye open on this. Maybe I'll land a spot in the closed beta and be able to get a better idea of what we're dealing with here. Let me know in the comments down below if you're interested in seeing more coverage on this one. Maybe we'll grab a copy and do an at first glance video to help give first impressions for those who are gonna still be on the fence even after it comes out. But until then, if you'd like to check out first impressions that I've made on a few other games, you can click the card on the left and see my at first glance video on Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Mirage, or click the card on the right to see my at first glance video on Insomniac Games' Marvel Spider-Man 2. Thanks for watching this far, and I will catch you in a future video. Peace out.
What? I already started, so I followed through.